Welcome everybody. I'm Steve Beatty, the head of Owned Media, and today we're going to be talking about SEO and answering 3 billion questions each day. So, as you guys have heard over the past couple of days from what Jeremy's talked about, Mike's talked about, Google's talked about, Facebook's talked about, mobile, 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 intent, 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 user, user, user. So really what it is who is that user out there? How am I reaching them? Am I answering that question that they're asking me? And if I'm not, then my competitor potentially is. And this is a significant number here, and if you look at the number of searches and questions that people are asking, even from 2008 to 2015, that's a substantial amount of growth, 12 billion. Google obviously is the most dominant force out there. Bing, Yahoo are still players in this space too that you have to consider, but on a global basis, Google is even bigger, where their share is 97%, I believe, in parts of Europe, South America, and the rest of the world. So very important to understand how are you creating that owned experience that answers those questions that people are asking. And what that really revolves around is it's become a more complex space. So I asked everybody in the last group, how many people were on search in 1998? Hands, anybody? All right, a couple people. I think the second crowd I had didn't raise their hand, so I said, you know what, I think I'm the oldest person in the room now. So what you've had here is AOL, dominant player. Yahoo, dominant player. Was Google a dominant player in 1998? No, they were pretty small. So it's just become that much more complex with that proliferation of devices. You've got people on mobile, searching for a location, people on mobile searching for a location that's potentially sharing that, people on mobile searching for a location, watching a video about that location. So you've got all of these different things going on at the same time. Are you answering all of those searches, and are you delivering content to all of those different types of audiences? So what we found this really revolves around are these 4 pillars, which is mobile. What's that intent? What's that device? Have I created that experience for that user? Local. Where are they? If they're on a mobile device, do I have a local experience that I'm giving them for a brand where they're looking to go to my store, or they're looking for information about me to contact me via phone, address, whatnot? Social. Is there a way that I can share coupons that I have in my store or content that I have with those people that are potentially on mobile, local, and then maybe sharing it through a social platform? And then content kind of underpins all of this, and it's kind of part of all of these. So first off, I'm going to go into mobile. And what that really is what kind of user experience are you creating for that mobile user? As you can see from these results for Bing and Google, there's so many things that people can be doing here, and you can see the impact of even having just a #1 result here that you don't even see anything below that. And that I took these phone captions from my Android phone, so you can see even with a screen this size, that's how much space you have right there to get to that audience. And all of these other things that they can go on too, with images, videos, news. It's become so much more complex, and you really have to evolve your strategy around that, especially for mobile. And so what it really is do you have that good search engine strategy for Google? Do you have content that's showing up there? Do you have that good user experience? Do you have that mobile content they're consuming? Do you have a local location in mobile that's indexed that they can find if they're looking for you? And then obviously the user experience. If somebody's going on to buy, they've clicked on you, do you have a responsive or adaptive design? Because you're probably going to lose them and you won't even know you've lost them because they didn't really become your user. They found that and they went to your site, it was like a desktop version and booted. So what this really is Google has really sound the horn on how important Google thinks mobile is. And with this algorithm update that they just had, which I'm sure some of you have seen this mobile getting with these phones blowing up and these giant mushroom clowns, it was like all over the web for the past couple weeks. And really what it is the significance they understand of that user base and mobile, and that we have more mobile devices than we have people. That's how people are searching, and they want to ensure they're getting that best user experience out of that. And so that's having that adaptive, responsive design. Creating that page speed that loads rather quickly so the user can find that information with you and they don't bounce from your site. And if you don't do it, they're going to penalize you for it. And that could be a loss of traffic, a loss of visibility that your competition's definitely going to gain on you. And I'll tell you this, Yahoo and Bing, we're probably going to be doing the same thing in the near future. So now thinking about that on a more holistic level, you could lose a lot of search visibility altogether if you're not considering mobile as a factor in your strategy. This was a great project we did with BlackBerry. I asked all these groups this question. See if I get a raise of hands. Does anybody in here have a BlackBerry? All right, I kind of figured that. Yeah. Well, I had somebody back at one of the tables, and she had two of them. I said, you know what, you're probably on their hero board there, and I'm sure they've reached out to you multiple times. But this was significant for them where they're a mobile company. They didn't even have a mobile web experience. So what we were able to do is leverage our in-house mobile user experts and build a responsive design strategy for them. So when somebody's going online, they actually can go on and see that BlackBerry has a mobile experience. Because if you're a mobile company, you should have a mobile experience. Because why would I buy from you if you don't even understand what your user base looks like? This was pretty significant for them. We saw a huge jump in traffic, user engagement. The last person in the last session asked me about what that actually means. It was people that were staying on longer on the site. They weren't just bouncing right away. Very significant. And then their big KPI was referrals, which is somebody goes to BlackBerry. They don't buy from BlackBerry, but they click on a link that takes them to telcos that will take them to Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. So you can see the significant impact that that had. And we did this campaign for them about 1.5 years ago. And so it just shows you, like, you really have to think ahead about that with mobile and that user base. Because today we're talking about mobile, and I've seen some clients we have where their traffic is 60% mobile now. A year ago, it wasn't like that. It was flipped the other way. It was 60% desktop, 40% mobile. So that user base is doing that, and so it really behooves you to really understand what kind of mobile strategy you can create and how we can leverage SEO for that. Next section is local, which is where. You've got your mobile device. Where are you? Do you have local content that you're supporting people with in that? And that's really ensuring that you're creating that user experience on local. Do you have local content? If somebody's looking for T-Mobile cell phone store in New York City, are you showing up on the map? Is it the right one that's showing up on the map? Is it showing up on Bing Maps? Is it showing up on Yahoo Maps? And that's really the point of how complex this is. It's so fragmented. Making sure you optimize your local management feeds. Do you have the right phone number, address that people are looking for? Are you relevant on Bing Maps, Yahoo Maps, Yelp, iPhone Maps, Google Maps? There's so many maps out there that you really have to ensure that you're creating that content feed and that local content so you're relevant for that user when they're looking for you. And what I found, it revolves around these three things. One is the mobile search, which we kind of covered off in the last section. Do you have a good mobile experience and local listings that are relevant for people that are looking for you? Good old desktop guy. There are still some of us that go onto desktop and look up things. And I'll say this, my mom and dad will still print out maps. So there's an audience out there for that. And Yelp is a huge one. If you'll notice from these other two results, Yelp is the #1 listing. So it just shows you that the proliferation of devices and the way we use apps now, that this almost is like another search engine that you're optimizing for, because people go on there and look things up. And I'll ask everybody in the room, how many people have Yelp on their phone as an app? How many people use it on a daily basis? Or at least once a week to look for, exactly. Do you go on Google and Bing to do that? No, you go right to that. So it just shows you need to understand how to use that. Is your location information relevant there? Can you optimize your location and relevancy inside of Yelp? Are you looking at reviews, which they see as like a key indicator of the value of your listing there? So it just shows you how complex the space is, and it goes beyond search engines. It's just users and how they behave and how they can use apps to find things beyond what a search engine is going to offer them. And what that boils down to is you've got your local listing. This is a great one we did for Jenny Craig, but really it's about local content. And that's really creating a micro strategy where you're not just looking at cities, because that's what everybody's been doing for the last couple of years, but neighborhoods. I know it's really hard to see in this example, but this piece of content says Jenny Weight Loss Center, Mission Valley, which is a neighborhood in San Diego. And it gets the proximity and vicinity to somebody that you really have to create in your strategy, or even to the zip code level. And that's creating local content where you're doing that. It's just become so important to do that. And it's because of these updates that Google has made, especially this Pigeon one that really looked at local content and said, are other local sites linking to you with local content? Do you have neighborhood pages? Do you have zip code pages? And then the doorway one was another big one, which I'm assuming Bing and Yahoo are probably going to be instituting the same thing in their search engine algorithm soon enough. And that was, if you've got a local page, and tell me how many of you have experienced this, because I hate this. You'll see a local listing pop up, you click on it, and then it just takes you back to a general locator page and not to the actual local page on the website, which really is annoying. And sometimes that's even a bad user experience where somebody's going to bounce and say, forget this, I'll just go with the next one up there. So it's having that local page. And when you've got that local listing somebody clicks on, you take them to a local page about your brand. And that really revolves around having that local content, and then even using content marketing where you're doing a local strategy, where you're doing some potential outreach, or you've got content locally out there and other brands or other sites are linking back to you with their local content, which really creates that significance in the local space. This is a great example of one we did with Jenny Craig, where we used some local internal software, built a landing page strategy for them, and then created all of these locations where they were prevalent in California. They had a really bad local listing experience, and that's the bread and butter what these guys do, are these weight loss centers that people can go to, where they can look them up, call them, visit one of these centers. They were not showing in local listings. Jesse in the back was actually part of this campaign. It was very successful, where we got these great results for them, and we were able to get them on page 1 for a lot of non-brand terms that people were looking for in terms of weight loss and local vicinity of that. Non-brand traffic, we raised that like 300%, and as well as increased their organic traffic overall. So it shows you the impact of just making a local strategy can have on an overall brand. So as we talked about mobile intent, local, where they're at, now we're going to go into social, and that's kind of this gray area with SEO, where you see some things happening where social and SEO intersect. Perfect example is the Twitter announcement that was made a couple weeks ago about them indexing tweets inside of Google. Can anybody tell me out there why that might be significant? Anybody? So if you release a new product and people are starting to complain about it, and that's what's getting indexed in Google, now you've got a reputation management problem. So it shows you how important it is to understand how social is going to intersect there, and it could cause problems for your brand. Now I'll go to the flip side. You could be launching a product, and there's ways we can amplify tweets or get other people, influencers, and do outreach to help get them to promote your brand through tweets, because users are going to start to create the behavior now where it's not just looking for a search result, but they're seeing that social result that's correlated with that, and they could potentially be clicking on that to see what other people are tweeting about that product. So it really shows you where SEO and social intersect. Beyond that, it's really Google Plus too, and Google Places. That do you have that location data in there that you're using? Do you have a Google Plus strategy? How many of you in here have an Android device? Wow, okay, tough crowd. If you're on Android, you're logged in, that's personalized search. This is a major influence on personalized search and can even change search results, and we've seen this with clients where one result showed up when you had login on, and a different result showed up when you had login off, because it's influenced by the peers you have and how they're plussing things as well. It's an important piece of Google. It's not the most important piece. I mean, obviously, working with Twitter, they're looking for other ways to integrate social into this too. But obviously, the Places one is for your location data, because that's what they're pulling in for their local listings. Facebook's another big one. I know Scott from Bank of America yesterday asked the Facebook gentleman when he's on the stage about this, about them becoming a search engine. So it's that next evolution of, okay, maybe I don't even have to go to Google or Bing anymore. Maybe I'm going to go right onto Facebook and share content with somebody. I don't even have to copy a link. So then that revolves around, okay, what more can we do on Facebook with SEO, with content and with sharing of content, where we know the user might not even go to a search engine, period. Last one I covered that off on with you guys was Twitter, and that's really reputation management or amplification of tweets. As they start to roll that out, Google said they're probably going to be doing that over the next couple of weeks, so we'll probably start to see more of that proliferate, and we can obviously follow up with you guys on a POV about that and some strategies and tactics maybe we can use to help support that with your brand. Great campaign we ran using Google Plus with Kelly Blue Book. And what they really focused on in the start of last year was this new cars campaign. They put a ton of branding dollars behind television, radio, to really promote that, because they had a new technology where they could give you assessment of a new car, value of it, and all of these different components which they were trying to drive people to their site with. So what we did is we used Google Plus and started porting in all of this rich content they had in the automotive industry, and actually started doing some A/B split testing where we were posting new cars from like Chevy, from Ford, Ferrari. They have a lot of high-end cars too. And we changed the color of some of these cars as we worked directly with their social team. And we saw there was more uplift, that people would click on those and then go to the website to do that. And overall, just by adjusting that and working with the social team on Google+, we increased their follower base by 600%, which goes back to the personalization that helps you in the search results. Increased click-through rate from Google+, as well as traffic that they drove directly from Google+ to their new cars section. So you can see as this is really complex now, there's so many different ways that people are searching that you can drive traffic. It doesn't just have to be that search result that you're driving all your traffic from. You have to pull all of these different levers at the same time. So final piece, the underpin, which is content. And this is a really great example here with HDTV. And there are potentially 3 different things that are going on. Whoops, a little too quick there. This person's buying, maybe. This person's looking for information. And this person's looking for news. So that one search query, there's 3 different types of people that are going on there. Do you have content that support all of those different user experiences? Do you have Google News feed dates that you have, like that you're putting in there, that you're feeding them so they know you're a valuable news source? So you're showing up there. So potentially you wouldn't have to be #1 for this result. You could be for this because maybe that person that's typing that in just wants some news about HDTV, which shows you how kind of content underpins all of this with social, mobile, and local. And so it's very important that you understand all of these different levers have to be pulled for something like this. And it's really becoming more sophisticated. And I think Pablo made a great point in the Google presentation with Bing yesterday about his son using voice search, not even using a keyboard, and that's how he looks for things. And that's a whole nother generation of people that we're probably going to see in the next 10 years where they're not even using keyboards anymore. So it's understanding that they're using Google now, they're using Siri, maybe there's even another voice platform that's going to come out, but it's not going to be people typing things in anymore. And then beyond that, to understand with search that you're answering those questions with the answer box in Google. You understand the knowledge graph, you have data in there, and then you understand that social content and social sharing that you're doing on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. And so this is a great example here of a campaign we ran for Solar City. Can anybody tell me the significance of this? Yes. So somebody typed that in, and they're potentially asking a question about solar panel cost. And Solar City got their content to show up there to answer that question, as well as control the search result for the first page #1 ranking. So what it shows you is there's a shift going on here where when somebody's asking a question, they're not always going to just click on this. They're going to maybe potentially seek out somebody that's answering this question first and then click on an actual brand result page. So significance of this is they could rank #1 for this, and another brand could rank for this because they have the more important content that the user is seeking out. So why is that significant? Well, 12,000 people a month look for this term, and they completely own the page where they're answering the question, building the trust with the brand, and then they'll potentially get them in the sales funnel.
How is that implemented?
You can use schema to tag it, so it's like a semantic tag you use, as well as creating a good user experience and navigation that you're linking to that content, and then Google understands that and sees that as the most relevant, as well as potentially videos you have out there with transcripts about that you can link back to that and at a more tactical level. This one is probably one of my favorite ones, and I'm going to do a little demonstration for you guys to just show you the impact of this. What is APR?
According to Bank of America, an annual percentage rate is the yearly rate of interest on your credit card. But why do APRs sometimes vary from the first year to the next and from transaction?
I don't see a search result with that, but it answered a question I asked. So we had Scott from Bank of America sitting right there, and somebody else said, okay, well that's great, and you got 22,000 visitors, but is that cannibalizing what's happening over here? Because they're just, the voice search answers their question, are they still going to click? He said they had a 200% uplift in traffic because they answered a question, they felt that brand, built the trust of that question they had, and then they clicked on the brand site. Huge. Voice is a huge part of this, and it's going to continue to be a bigger piece of search strategies. This last one's a great one. T-Mobile did a huge rebranding campaign. Anybody in here on T-Mobile? Oh, all right, nice. You're the first person. So what they did is they spent, oh my God, I can't even tell you the number, but it was somewhere in the $150, $200 million range, where they were doing offline television, radio to say, you don't have to have a 2-year plan anymore. We're going to break all the rules in the telco industry. And they really shook it up by doing this. And they started putting these videos online as the first run campaigns. The only problem was they weren't optimizing them and they weren't sharing them. So we stepped into that, did some optimization for some of the videos, looked at some of the search behaviors, monthly searches for those, optimized them, did some outreach and social sharing. So just as a point of reference for this, when they first put this video up, it had 5,000 views. After we were done working with them after 2 weeks, it had 260,000, 25,000 people shared it, and we got it to rank number 6 in a real prestigious category on YouTube called the Science and Technology section. So just shows you all these complex pieces that you really have to put together. You have to have that mobile strategy, know where they're at, create that social sharing, and then have content underpin all of that. And we've seen success when we've done this in year 1 and 2 with campaigns with clients of a 15 to 20% uplift. Thank you. Questions?
I'm curious about the voice search with it.
Yes.
Bank of America. Was it in the content that was being read that it said according to Bank of America?
Yep. They found them as the most relevant piece of content. They used a really good interlinking strategy to that content. Used schema markups. So it was very easy for the search engine to say, okay, this is probably the most relevant piece of content. And the impact of that is significant considering now you're addressing a whole other type of user that's not even typing anything into a search engine. Yes?
With that YouTube example, I know it used to be the world's largest or second largest search engine. Do you see people still going to YouTube to search, or are they more so coming through Google or through social sharing?
Going directly to YouTube. And that's why this has become more complex. It's not just about search engines anymore. It's about what are you optimizing on Facebook, on Yelp, on YouTube, and on the search engines, because there's all those different audiences out there, and they are getting more fragmented. But are you in each one of those different places where they're at, where they're potentially just looking at your video and then they go directly and buy? Yes?
Can you dumb that down, the voice thing again for me? So where did that voice content live?
It lived on their site, and it had the semantic tags around them, which told the search engine, hey, this is an answer box question content that you can serve up. And they interlinked it inside of their Bank of America site. So they had links from other pages pointing back to that page, and videos and transcripts that were pointing back to that page to just show Google, hey, everybody's talking about this content that they have there. And that's why we've seen it as the most significant answer to their question.
So you pick up your phone, looks like you just put your password in, right? And
Yeah.
then where were you when you did the voice?
I went on Google Now and just said, what is APR?
Okay.
Which is the way a lot of people are searching now, like they don't even type in.
Siri as well. Is it powered the same way?
It's on Bing. Bing operates a little differently. I don't think they show up #1 in voice on that, but it's because Bing hasn't fully developed that semantic search and understanding of the user behavior. So, but they'll probably be able to do that again. I assume that content would show up there because they have a very good strategy around voice and SEO in general. Yes?
The brands you see that are doing local search very well, who have online businesses as well as brick and mortar,
Mm-hmm.
what side do you see managing, like, of the brands that are doing it very successful, is it under the online side or is it under the store side? Do they have like a local search?
Online side, mostly. It really depends. Every organization is different. Sometimes it falls under brand. Sometimes it'll fall under a marketing brand. Sometimes it falls under IT. It really depends. So I've never seen it fall under the store managing group, though. It's typically an IT thing, technical group, web content team. That's what we've seen a lot of. I've never really seen it under that particular group. Is that a problem you're trying to tackle?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, maybe we can talk about more of that offline.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes?
It talks a lot about how it's gotten more complex and how you leverage all the different types of content you have out there. A lot of times that content's being generated by a lot of different portions of the organization.
Right.
Have you found best practices of how to get the education out there, or what are the other strategies so they start to understand how SEO now fits into all these channels or content types that probably isn't necessarily top of mind across an entire organization?
From a more holistic place, I think that comes down to creating a centralized model where you maybe have a couple stakeholders from each group that you meet regularly with, and then you train them up on best practices, or you work with their groups individually so they understand how what they do with their channel effort impacts all the rest of them, and they see kind of how they all work together. But having that internal stakeholder or stakeholders in those groups that truly understand what you do and they become the advocates for you, unless we have people on site, obviously, is huge. And we've gone through every campaign that I've ever worked on where it does take a lot of education in the beginning, especially for some brands where you have a more conventional style of radio and television drives everything that we do, or brand drives everything that we do, and then you just really have to show them, here's all these other things you could be doing that you'll get on top of what you're already doing if you just look at it from this perspective. Yes?
Could you talk about some of your experiences with integrating SEM and SEO in
Sure.
a more holistic strategy?
Yeah, we did one of these with Neiman Marcus, which, you know, obviously I got 15 minutes to present here. I couldn't put everything because I could talk to you guys all day about all this stuff. And that was a great one, and what we did was we had a free shipping ad that we were running on paid, and it was very successful, got a high click-through rate, and we found the other brands didn't do free shipping. So they went in, this was a simple one too, they just went into the meta description for Neiman Marcus for organic and put free shipping in there, and they saw a 97% increase in click-through rate and like 50% in traffic, just from that standalone. T-Mobile, we did a really good one with their SIM cards where we saw uplift, and we changed out the title in the SIM card page that they had and saw 20% uplift in traffic and 40% uplift in conversions just by changing the title tag, because we looked at the paid data and saw that the user behavior was they were looking for this certain title and that's what they were clicking on. So, and that's kind of what we're doing more so now, and doing more integrated dashboards where we're looking at what's working and paid on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, and how can we leverage that in content we're creating on the SEO side, as well as A/B split testing content is on top of that. Yes?
T-Mobile YouTube example,
Yes.
everything that you did was SEO in that case, like an optimization on the back end, or was it also bolstered by a paid?
It was bolstered a little bit by paid and by social, and that's why when I'm talking about complexities of here and how SEO and social intersect, it really is. You have to have those different groups working together. It's not just one single entity. It is a mixed media model where, as you saw from what Mike talked about today, we're leveraging some owned in there. We're leveraging some bought, and we're leveraging some earned, and that's really how you have to look at this to amplify these things now. It's not just one lever you can pull that's going to do everything for you.
Was there a portion of those views then that you would attribute to like a true view?
Some of them were, yeah. It was a mix of all of those things, and to me that seems to be the best way to do it. You can't just truly do one and expect that to produce everything.
Just on that note, there's usually like a short window when you first launch a campaign that these algorithms are watching very closely, and if you can really get that paid search boost in that window, you'll usually see a higher ranking in YouTube for that same piece of content.
And what it is, it's views. If they see unique views from people, then that can get you a pretty good boost. Other questions? Yes?
So, with the complexity that you just described, what are the challenges now for clients in terms of getting the recommendations done? If it's so much harder, if there's so many more things that we actually have to be looking at, how much harder is it, or is it, for them to implement things that we're suggesting that they change?
That's a great question, and that really goes back to, I showed you all of these things, and then the first question that I think people in here would ask would be, what would I prioritize? And that's really what it's going to be. We're probably going to do one of these at a time, unless there's a big brand budget to really support SEO. But that goes back to what Erica was talking about. You have to have that internal advocacy where these other groups understand the impact of the channel and what it can drive and what we have driven. And then we can go from prioritizing one particular strategy with local, mobile, social, or content to doing all of those at the same time, or doing a couple of those at the same time so we can show them the impact. Typically local, if you're not doing it well, you can see a big uplift from that one, because now you're suddenly visible to people with all of these micro local searches for zip code, for neighborhood, that can have a real big impact. So, does that answer your question? Yep. Okay.
How much time we have?
Yeah, we're down to the lunch break, so there are
All right.
additional questions. You can always-
Thanks, Steve.
All right.